and welcome back to What's the Point? North Lanarkshire's very own topical, debatable, educational podcast that aims to educate and give insight to the people in North Lanarkshire about local workings of politics, not only at a local level, national level, etc. as well. My very good friends, Jerry Brennan, is back with us. Jerry, the Bellsy Hill bowler, how are we?
Very well, Craig, and as always, it's an extraordinary pleasure to be in your company. Absolutely.
And it's good to see our old friend back, Jerry.
Well,
he's back this week, no holidays, no golf, no shenanigans.
Well, golf season coming to the end, it's an absolute travesty. And I'm taking all the shoes of our own pin-up boy Thigo of last week. I
don't you worry, you are the Mr. Magoo. I wish on it. You are the wishy Magoo. But anyway, moving on, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. People at home may notice as well that we're in new surroundings here.
Celebrities.
This is our new full-time studio, which we're extremely happy at, finally.
Fantastic.
Moving on, Jerry hit upon a subject matter
He did.
a couple of minutes ago. I get that it could still be very raw for you. Would you like me to pull out a wee doll and you can touch where it's hurting?
No,
because I get that there is a, what would we call it? I need to be very careful myself in how I describe it. In fact, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to shut up and go like, you take the rein here.
You say hurt. So effectively, in my role as councillor that's there, we all know that there's the governing body, if you like, Standards Commission of Scotland.
Yep.
So, who oversee the behaviour and conduct of elected members.
Yep.
And recently there was a complaint lodged, supposedly about my conduct, that made its way to the Ethical Standards Commissioner. And the Ethical Standards Commissioner, to draw the distinction, does the investigative reports, collates all the information, makes a recommendation to the Standards Commission of Scotland, who then set a panel to decide.
Sorry, I'm going to ask a very simple question for those at home. So the Ethical Standards Commission, are those the people who are qualified to conduct an investigation in matters?
Yep, I would say so.
And what's the makeup of the Standards Commission for Scotland?
Yep, it's different.
Oh, it's different.
Are they members?
Lay members?
I think you've got in the Standards Commission, you have qualified legal individuals that's there, but the actual hearing panel. So there's a hearing panel that's put together. So the Ethical Standards Commissioner, whose job and profession it is to compile these reports, submits the report to the Standards Commission panel to decide whether there's any further action taken, and he makes a recommendation based on his evidence. His recommendation, based on his evidence, was that and it was a social media post that we're talking about.
Right.
Is that the very...
Would you like me to post it? Not post it on this.
You could do that.
Yeah, remember in the public, it's in the public domain.
There was a comment made within there, and his interpretation of it, having looked at it, investigated, was that it would be covered under the freedom of expression, extended freedom of expression for, I'm going to say politicians, mostly, on the basis that's there, and that the recommendation was that there was no further action to be taken. Within 2 days, for whatever reason, the Standards Commission panel went against that recommendation and said, no, we're going to have a hearing, which means it's a public hearing, like a kind of makeshift court case, quasi-legal.
So is it the same setup as a court?
Pretty well.
The same legal parameters as a court?
It's quite similar. You have a panel that's there made up of 3 members of the Standards Commission who sit, they basically, I think, they are part-time members who
what's their legal background?
I don't think they particularly have any legal background. So
they don't have any legal background, but they're demanding you attend and appear.
Yes. So professional people, I think the panel was made up of...
I don't disagree, they're potentially professional people, but are they your peers? Are they holding a position of legal expertise?
So no elected.
No elected.
None of that panel would consist of individuals who had a previous life, a previous elected life.
No.
Is there anybody with a council life?
No.
No? I'm sure there is.
You have got, well, in my panel, so I think just now that there's 3 panel members sat in the hearing that I was there. There's also a 4th member and I think it's just down to availability. So the
Right.
fourth member, I believe, is what they call an ex or retired monitoring officer. Now, a monitoring officer is a legal background that used to work for a particular local authority.
Most senior solicitor
Yes, within a council.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So that particular individual wasn't on my hearing panel, but
Yeah.
will sit on other
Yeah.
hearing panels that's there. So,
just a quick question,
Yeah.
yes, and I know I'm going to go on a wee tangent here in a second. The monitoring officers know each other because there's only 32 local
I was gonna say,
authorities,
there
so I
isn't-
imagine there's 32 monitoring officers.
I have no idea the kind of connections are otherwise, but 32 people in all of Scotland. I don't know.
I would find it difficult to imagine that they wouldn't.
Yeah.
So you've got
The relationship there.
yeah, I mean, even loosely there would be, because there would be situations where individuals fulfilling the same role
Yeah.
would have particular issues.
Yeah.
So it would,
Colleagues.
well,
Yeah.
so you've got the monitoring officer,
Yeah.
right? You also have the Section 95 officer, the finance officer.
Yeah.
I would find it difficult to accept.
Well, I'm aware that they do chat consecutively monitor
Aye, so
Section 95 officers.
I would find it difficult to accept that Section 95 officers across the
Yeah.
country wouldn't have some kind of group
Yeah. Sorry.
sounding board to speak to each other. So
Apologies, I digress, by the way. Just going to go, David, sorry if I take it
No,
away
no,
with a
you're
tangent.
absolutely fine.
Apologies, I'm
It's-
just curious.
Let's try to get people to understand it, I guess,
Yeah.
at the end of the day as well. So you asked about the setup of the court,
Yeah.
or the hearing panel. So you have the hearing panel. The Standards Commission is also represented by a chief officer legal,
Yeah.
and also a further employee that's there. So there are effectively 5 people that were involved from the Standards Commission. From the Ethical Standards Commission, which is the investigative side in terms of the report that I talked about earlier, there was 2 people that's there, and then myself as defendant and
respondent.
respondent.
No, it's
Sorry.
different terminology.
Yeah.
I've got to say it felt like defendant, but let's say respondent, and then of course you can call witnesses.
Yeah.
So in terms of a court case, I suppose it's very similar. The main difference would
Same
be
due process?
no,
No.
no. I
Are you
would
given a fair hearing in your opinion?
I think you've got to look at the hearing and think, if you've got a system whereby you have a panel established that effectively already has predetermined, possibly in their own mind, because they've called the hearing in the first place. So they have taken the interpretation of the Ethical Standards Commissioner's report, looked at that, and in this particular case disagreed with them.
Sorry, I'm going to bring this back because if I'm a member of the public watching this, I'll be like, what
What
you're
you're
talking
talking
about. So ethical standards report, what was the
Yes.
outcome of the report in relation to your social media post?
That was the extended right of freedom of expression, so there was
So
no
under
further action.
Article 10 European Court
Correct,
of Human Rights,
absolutely.
that you have freedom of speech a wee bit and protection in relation to that.
Correct.
That was the outcome.
So
Yes.
can I ask a
Yes.
question? Right. So the hearing,
Yes.
was the hearing then set out to try and deny you your
Rights.
right under Article 10?
It certainly felt like it. So what you've got there is a recommendation from the professional that's written this report in the first place.
So you're a qualified individual who's wrote that.
It's a full-time position, and
Right,
it's a senior position. It's not.
Right.
This isn't someone that just kind of rolls up and takes.
Potentially a legal background, I would
Oh,
imagine
absolutely.
then.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, appointed by the Scottish Government for, I think it's a rolling period of 6 years at a time. And
Right.
A senior position.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
there. Makes the recommendation that there should be no further action based on Article 10
Yeah.
of freedom of expression. That's there. And then you have...
Was your behaviour bad and shocking?
No, it wasn't that.
That was the Facebook post derogatory? Was it
No.
hateful?
No.
Was it any of these things that
Was
could
it
potentially
targeted?
be malice? No.
No.
Right, okay.
So the one thing about the whole thing is that it's the subjective interpretation of stuff that really got me.
Yeah.
Is that you've got someone that does this for a full-time job, making the interpretation based on evidence to say, actually, this is covered under legislation.
Yeah.
And then you have 3 part-time members of the panel, Standards Commission
Yeah.
panel, who sit, I think, dedicate 4 days a month or something of
Yeah.
their time to do it.
Yeah.
Going against that recommendation. And that for me was the huge contradiction, as to how can you have this subjective nature, but it has the
I was going to
implication.
say it's prejudicial, surely. That's
What was
completely
it? What was it?
prejudicial.
What was it? What was the outcome? Because if you're looking at the Ethical Standards Commissioner who's appointed for a 6-year period or whatever, and they have a long and lengthy investigation, and they look at all the evidence, and they look at comments from you and others, and they arrive at a conclusion.
Yes.
It sounds absolutely arbitrary. The entire process sounds arbitrary.
Hold on a minute. So if one conclusion is that you're protected under Article 10 and permitted to freedom of speech,
Yes.
And the other group disagrees.
and the other group disagree,
Yes.
what was the outcome?
The outcome, effectively, you can have different outcomes. My outcome was that I've been suspended for a month
Suspended
from duties of being a councillor. So in terms of committee meetings, council meetings, that kind of stuff, ceremonial events, which is actually really quite hurtful, because coming up to Remembrance Day, I was actually asked.
Fireworks display could be there.
Lots of stuff that effectively kind of pulls that from it. So you've got different levels, so you can have a censure.
And your human rights denied as a consequence of that?
Who knows? That's one that's. I mean, effectively, there's an appeals process, but the only appeals process means you go to the sheriff court. So it's quasi-judicial. So insignificant.
It sounds to me that it's a completely and utterly arbitrary process. Then surely that again, if you're taking the professional opinion of somebody that's compiled a report, conducted an investigation, has found that there is no case to answer based on Article 10, then surely that recommendation should be taken at face value. Why would you pursue a case against an individual who has no prior record, no prior history, was only elected a couple of years ago in relation to an innocuous, let's not kid on about it, I'll call it for what it is, an innocuous Facebook post?
Through to suspension.
Yeah. Why do you think the system is set up in such a way to target elected members who are potentially, in my opinion, doing their job?
Well, there's the element of keeping the status quo and keeping it quiet. There's the element when you look at the percentage of hearings or councillors, elected members taken to a hearing process.
What is that then?
It's something like 86%.
of 86 are found to be innocent?
No, 86% have a censure or a sanction imposed.
86%?
86% of people turn up.
So wait a wee second here, because I'm sure
I would have thought it would do
that questions as much as what
I would just have thought it went to hearing, right, and you would always validate the Ethical Standards Commissioner's report, and the 86% of those cases going to the hearing would reflect
the panel's made up of laymen, that you would expect it, because again, they're not coming for a political background, they're not coming for a council background, they're not coming for a legal background, so they're not coming for any of these things. But I've got a question for you, and before I break my train of thought, what protections in place for the elected member? Because we've discussed this openly in previous times on this podcast about the weaponisation of the Code of Conduct for elected members. I've seen it myself firsthand. I've experienced
it's right.
I've experienced it. Where I've been threatened with Code of Conduct, I've been threatened with this. I've even experienced it, by the way, with very significant and senior people, clear bullying and harassment for these individuals. But again, I'm sure that will all come out at a later date. But the position, what protection mechanisms there for the elected member?
Well, there's no protection on the basis other than that fallback appeals position, which obviously takes you down a very judicial legal route that's there, the cost and everything else.
Right.
But first thing, you've got to accept that there's a system in place for a reason.
Right.
And I've acknowledged that. I said that.
No one disagrees with that.
It doesn't matter what industry that you're at. There has to be some kind of code structure based on code of conduct. That's absolutely fine. I think what got me was that on the basis of trying to defend myself is that on numerous, in fact most occasions when I was actually just trying to ask witnesses questions, is that they were closed down because they were deemed as irrelevant. And
how can questions to witnesses be irrelevant if you're defending yourself?
I had difficulty with that, I've got to say. So you then get the situation where you can't ask the questions that you think actually give the background
the context.
So no
Context
nuance allowed.
of what that,
no
how it
context.
originated, where we got there.
Yeah.
I think the other part that really got, and I stated quite clearly, the only person that really knew the absolute intent of that Facebook post was me.
Yeah.
And I was quite open when I said that. And basically, what has happened is that the panel members have decided, and me, I've taken it as that they just said, no, you're telling lies.
You're telling lies.
Well, in fact, how else do you interpret that? I'm saying to you, Greg, this is effectively how this post arrived, and this was the intent behind it and everything else. And there was nothing malicious or anywhere close to malicious in it. And you then say to me, nah, that's not right. We don't actually believe what you're saying. So really what we're going to do, we're going to impose sanctions upon you.
That's backwards.
Because we believe otherwise.
Prejudicial. Where's any natural justice in that process?
I see if I was a councillor coming into a new councillor coming in, and I had full knowledge that was the process. I don't know if I would even bother becoming involved in elected life.
The process was huge. I'm trying not to be angry about it, but hugely disappointing.
Well, again, you look at the other line of work, because I think this is important to highlight as well. Elected members are not employees.
No.
We don't have any legal employment status, so we're not protected. If this was a case that we were employees at the council and such behaviours were getting taken on us, we would at least be able to go to the union or go to somebody to fight our corner and say, by the way, is due process being followed here? Whereas if you look at this and what's been demonstrated towards you, there is nobody to govern or watch the watchman in this instance.
No.
I wouldn't normally say this to him, right? Because normally I would be ripping it out of him.
Yeah.
But for an individual like David, for a person, a member of the public like David, to be seriously censured, given the type of person he is, the character that I know him to be, the person that I know him to be, I find that really outrageous.
Oh well, definitely.
Because if an individual like David can be suspended for conduct which at the very worst could be seen at maybe naive, maybe careless, but certainly not malicious, not targeted.
I don't want to talk too soon, because again I don't know the full details of your case, David. But for what I do know is hypersensitivities were at play in relation to this case, and I'm being very careful because there are other sides to the story. And from my perspective here, for individuals with hypersensitivities that have got proven track records of raising complaints against elected members. So the concern that I would have is the malice and the intent behind those overinflated complaints.
Well, I think that one of the phrases that the Ethical Standards Commissioner who was there making the case for his report was that he said basically it was he reckoned it was clumsy.
The complaint was clumsy? No,
the actual, potentially the content of the Facebook post, he said it was perhaps clumsy, was the phrase that he used.
So you chose a wee bit better wording than that.
Correct, and that's very much what was his kind of recommendations there. But I think the other thing that we've got to bear in mind, and I've got to say this, I'm sorry, is that, and I said to the panel in summing up, is that they'd taken on board untruths and misdirection and inaccurate comments that were submitted against me in terms of the complaint that's there. Provable inaccuracies.
What do you mean untruths? So somebody is deliberately misled that panel?
Yes.
In addition to that as well, so my thinking would be, and I hope you would correct me if I'm wrong here, Jerry, that if I deliberately went out my way to give inaccurate or false information about you, surely that should look at the entire proceeding on the basis of the case and turn around and say, well, hold on a second, how accurate can the other stuff be?
Wasn't heard.
Wasn't
allowed to be heard.
Wasn't
allowed to be presented. Because effectively, I can see the stance to a point. It was my conduct that was in place, but without any kind of contextual background as to what was there, and also taking into account that there were deliberate slurs that were
Was
made.
it Blue Water scandal mentioned, David?
It was.
Was it your fault, David?
Well, that was probably about 5 years
Since you
before I
weren't
was even
elected. Since you weren't
But
elected.
there was a concerted effort in my mind, unfortunately, to misdirect that panel, and that the panel accepted.
So really in effect then, what you're telling us, David, because if we think about it, and as I said that previously there, this entire process is weaponised. I can't believe how arbitrary this process, considering the fact that it's actually based on the Local Government Act. So if it's based on the Local Government Act, which is legislation, and then it would have a quasi-judicial sort of element to it, that there's no checks and balances to protect the elected member in that. Really in effect what you're saying is you were guilty before you walked in that room, because you weren't given any right to reply really in that. Now don't get me wrong, you probably managed to write statements, etc., but if you're getting the opportunity to question witnesses, those people who are actively involved in that proceeding, then where's it's a kangaroo court really in effect, is it no? Because if you're bypassing professional individuals' recommendations and reports.
Yeah, I think to be fair, my impression was that very early on is that I got the impression that the decision had probably already been made.
Yeah.
And that what I was trying to do was reverse that decision. So it wasn't about turning up, and I honestly expected to be able to go and make a plausible case and be heard openly.
You were fighting to make sure the recommendation was upheld.
That's kind of that's kind of what it felt like. It was that I was trying to go against the tide a wee bit.
Oh my!
Is how it felt sitting there. And there's a couple of things you mentioned about witnesses and stuff.
Yeah.
I think we need to open that part through, is that even when, because my friend Jerry here, yourself, others submitted witness statements and testimony that was there. And one of the things that really concerned me was that the initial couple of questions that I was trying to ask, and I was directing Jerry, it was at that particular time, to a particular document so that he could understand that document was, so I could ask him a question about it. And you looked at me blankly because it wasn't there. And then I tried a second time and said, okay, let's miss that first one, let's go to the second page. This is page 28.
Well, your heart must have been in your mouth at that point.
Well, it was off-putting because you're in a situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, goodness me.
You're just trying to get yourself started. And effectively what transpired was that the document that you were looking at didn't even relate to my case.
What did it relate to?
So, it related. I didn't have my glasses on, right? But I immediately recognised what was in front of me.
Right.
Because it related to a case about another North Lanarkshire issue.
All right. Can you divulge any information on that?
That came from the Savour NLC 9.
Oh my God, Jerry. I was involved heavily in that.
I know you were involved heavily in that. So, and individuals were identified.
Am I one of those individuals that was identified?
You were one of the individuals identified on the front page of
that. That's a significant data breach then.
And other elected members of North Lanarkshire Council were also mentioned.
Was there any officers mentioned in that report?
There was, indeed.
Oh my goodness.
So I had that document on my desk. Now, the issue for me after it was, why on God's earth was a file relating to a case that
I can say here
why that would. Now listen, just before you go, I've worked in environments where sensitive data has had to be gathered, stored as per the GDPR. There is no reasonable explanation for that document being presented to me at that hearing.
Well, I would have significant concerns in relation to that for two reasons.
Why?
One being that case was dismissed based on inaccurate information that was presented to the Standards Commission from those making the allegations. Right? So we had a very significant individual present that there was a confidentiality breach in relation to that, which was later proven by significant evidence that individual misled the panel because that information was freely in the public domain, and the Standards Commission accepted that, so much so I asked for my hearing to go ahead so that I could highlight the inaccurate information in a public forum whereby that individual would see that they have deliberately misled the panel, or potentially deliberately misled the panel.
You were a witness for David,
Yes.
right? But a case
That was dropped.
that had
Completely.
been brought against you
Yeah.
was presented to me
Wow.
during your...
Yeah, I was unaware of this at the time. Which
Surely-
made it even worse, to be
Surely that entire process is unsafe.
I would suggest that entire process was unsafe.
Because
I
the
think
second
serious
part of
questions
my
need to be
point
asked.
is, in
I
relation
would-
to that,
I would feel unsafe in an environment
Yeah.
like that.
well, here's the thing. Do you think the second point that I was going to come on to make? Do you think, because I really can't square the peg and why that dossier would
There's
be
no-
at that hearing?
There's
is
no
absolutely
reasonable
no
explanation for it.
Two
Absolutely
cases
not.
are completely different. Two of them historically were in different time scales. So why any documentation? What do you think? Because it's the second point. Do you think that document was presented on that day to try and potentially highlight witnesses that were there in attendance for David Crichton?
This is why data protection is so important.
Yeah.
And this is why the careful storage
Yeah.
of protected information like that is important. And if the Standards Commission
Yeah.
cannot safely do that,
Yeah.
and documentation relating to a witness is brought forward and presented
Yeah.
to a witness for a completely different case, there are so many questions to ask about
Yeah.
that. What happened to the storage? Each individual case, as I understand it, has a unique identification.
I take your point on storage, and I take your point on data protection, but I think there's a more fundamental point here that again, and potentially, as I said, I'm commenting as a member of the public. I'm putting that out right now.
I sat as a witness, as a member of the public
This
at
is
that hearing.
my opinion and my belief. So a complete and utter disclaimer. There are other individuals involved in relation to your case who have been proven to deliberately have misled, so much so that the Standards Commission had to drop a case against me because it was factually inaccurate, the information
And
that
that
they
case landed
presented
on my
to
desk.
get a hearing. Was the same individuals involved in yours?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my. So
You've really got, to me it's a huge issue because you've got the data breach, but you've also, and you'll understand that I kind of sought legal counsel.
Yeah.
And I'm quite fortunate that I have a close friend that is a senior solicitor and etc. and he's been very great. His initial reaction was, unsafe was the word that he also used, Jerry, to be fair, is that should that procedural error happen in an actual court of law, is that all hell would have broke loose. And basically what would have happened was that the case would have been suspended or stopped or dropped, and the Procurator Fiscal presenting that case, I'm guessing, would have get a tune.
so did they stop yours?
No, there was no mention.
So-
I was totally unaware that this whole thing...
So when that was brought to everybody's attention, because I'm sure that had to have been brought to
No, it
everybody's
wasn't, that's the
attention.
thing, it was brought
What do
to
you
attention.
mean it wasn't?
Well, all that was said at that, because I was still looking to ask him questions at that point, and all that was said was that, sorry, that's not your file, here's the proper one.
David,
There's a data breach created, and I wasn't even advised
And
at your hearing.
had I not mentioned that to you, you would be blissfully unaware.
Yes.
Had I not mentioned it to you,
Yeah.
you too would be
Well, I
blissfully
had to write an
unaware.
email inquiry asking why was that presented. The response I get back for the Standards Commission, by the way, quite concerning, significantly concerning, considering that these people are holding a judgment position over me. And to be honest, are freely sharing my information in previous cases that went absolutely nowhere. They had to dismiss that case based on inaccurate information because it could potentially embarrass them.
Can I ask a question that I've not seen other than what was presented to me as a witness, and I genuinely recognised it immediately for what it was. Is David mentioned in your case?
No.
At all?
No. It's absolutely
So
no
there's
relevance.
no relevance
None.
whatsoever.
Completely separate matter. It was in relation to NLC 9 workforce, just so people at home are aware. NLC 9 workforce, I think Anum Kazier was the MP at the time. It was in relation to the SNP's response. She put a post out, she did this story in the National. Myself, Paul and others basically says, well, we're a bit late to doing this. Wholly support the fact that you're now on board with it. But it was a budget decision made by your group in North Lanarkshire, and that was deemed private and confidential information. No, it wasn't. It was proven it wasn't. He had absolutely
nothing.
No involvement.
No
whatsoever.
relation to it. No.
His name's not even mentioned.
Right. Which begs the question
Why?
as to why that would be presented at your case when it just so happens that he's a witness.
I wonder if our political opponents were cast as conspiracy theorists under this conversation now.
I don't think there's any. The facts are the facts. The facts basically
Again,
are.
we've got a Labour leader as well turning around and saying every senior officer within North Lanarkshire Council take Standards Commission complaints against these individuals.
Yeah, you do.
So again, no a betting man, but I'm starting to see the odds stacking up against us as opposed to anything else because of the actions and behaviours of the other individuals.
Then you have members of the administration regularly calling for the expulsion of members, so that too
standing over 50, yes.
And there's going to be a totting up. There is going to be a totting up system of coming through from the Ethical Standards Commission around conduct. So, and that recommend. I'm not saying that recommendation paper will go through, but certainly if political opponents were minded to target individual councillors, they could use that.
Do you know what I would love? Do you know what I would love? I would love for people that's been involved in this process before, any elected member in the country, to make contact with us, because we'd be very interested to have a discussion with them about the process that they faced. What was the charges that they were up on? They call it charges, kind of. Probably. No idea what we call it in a quasi-judicial arena, but let's call it charges for simplicity. I would be very interested to see how councils react to certain individuals and members. I would also be interested to see what the political balances of these councils are. Is this politically motivated, or is it a case that individuals' behaviour is so abhorrent that it has to be raised? My own suspicions and my own beliefs and my own opinion has been for a significant number of years. I've been an elected member for over 7 years now. The behaviours that I've seen demonstrated towards me would tantamount to bullying and intimidatory behaviour, and yet these individuals are the one raising complaint against me. Absolutely absurd that the victim becomes the complaint.
I know that you want to wind this up, and we're kind of going on, so it's a motive subject for me, but one of the points that you raised there was about the evidence, if we call it that was presented, and the reliability of that. Now, a lot of my questions were around the reliability and the accuracy of the information that was presented to that panel to make a decision. And there's two major incidents, effectively. So let's cover, if I can, just briefly. Complainant references a formal complaint made to Police Scotland.
Sorry?
Formal complaint made to Police Scotland, who viewed the matter very seriously. They were the words.
What does that mean?
Well, it transpires there was no formal complaint made to Police Scotland, but that was in the original complaint submission. So original complaint submission gets made on the basis of saying how serious this is. Police Scotland were involved.
For an innocuous Facebook post.
That's almost separate. That's almost separate. It's the untruth. I think it's the untruth element of that.
Listen, I understand that, but your sensitivity is so high with an innocuous Facebook post that you have to go to a senior police figure in the authority to my goodness. But it was the submission of the information to say that Police Scotland had taken the referral very seriously, and that was then backed up by a second individual to say how bad this was, and it was your behaviour was bad and shocking,
and it was dreadful. But only when the Ethical Standards Commissioner that we've mentioned about the investigative process actually asked the questions to say, okay, if that's your submission, then where is the incident report? Where is the crime reference number?
Which you would expect.
And the officer effectively that was involved in your complaint. Well, there was no evidence of that because it never happened.
Right.
But that was all put forward as evidence against oneself.
And were you allowed to question that then?
No, that's the bit that really gets me, is that I was not allowed to bring that forward in any contextual basis to let the panel understand how reliable was this complaint in the first place.
Absolutely bonkers.
The second complainant that latterly jumped on the back of the first complainant, shall we say, that's there, effectively also accused me of being disingenuous, fabricating of the truth, perverse.
That's a lovely one.
A lot of motive strong words that were used.
Is that in relation to the production that you asked me about?
Yes, that was where I was trying to take it, because effectively the information, he basically said that I had fabricated the basis that there was no ongoing investigation by either Police Scotland or Audit Scotland
with regards to their conduct
in relation to the major procurement award that was made in North Lanarkshire recently.
Right.
And even when I tried to factually correct the panel on the basis that number of elected members have been interviewed and met with Police Scotland, as well as external people have been interviewed and met by Police Scotland, and as well as meetings that have been taken by Audit Scotland that we have been involved in, to disprove that fact is that it was never heard and it was disclosed because they didn't want to hear that part. Now, to me, it's just wrong. It doesn't sit well. It doesn't sit properly, because you're allowed, it seems, that the complainant and complainants are allowed to put forward spurious allegations that they cannot then back up, and in fact they're just inaccurate.
Well, I've seen it myself, David. It's
and it's in fact to the point it's there because it's the same people.
Yeah.
And that really worries me as a basis of where
you don't think it's a partner behaviour, do you?
I don't know. I think there's no accountability though on that
potentially
basis.
A partner behaviour that I'm seeing that I would be as bold to claim. But as I said again, I find that absolutely scandalous in this day and age that we have a trained professional organisation like the Ethical Standards Commission who conduct an impartial, without fear or favour, completely impartial, fully detailed report and make a recommendation. We then have this separate body who can overturn the decision of those professionals made up of laymen in existence in a panel, but present it as that this is some sort of court proceeding and you must follow proper channels that you would expect in a legal proceeding, but yet you have absolutely no natural justice at all. You have no due process at all, and in addition to that, the entire thing is arbitrary in nature. And my concern is what I witnessed from that event and even my previous experiences. This is all weighted in favour of the complainant because of the significant positions that they hold.
Yes.
What a farce.
Sorry, I just need to
carry on, David,
because that is how I feel about this nonsense.
People might think this is a bitter summation of what happened, and it's not. It generally isn't.
It's an observation of events.
And a total reflection of what that whole process was. But if you've got a system whereby it dictates subjectively how the information is viewed, what information is taken into account or dismissed, the fact that you cannot ask the questions that you want to ask of your witnesses because they are quashed, and
the witnesses are not even compelled to attend, so you can't.
There's
no check.
There's a bigger issue at play.
How do you actually get into a system whereby you put forward an honest interpretation of what has actually happened when the information, the people, the questions, the outcome, the sanctions, everything is determined?
Tell me this is
by
filmed.
3 people.
Was this filmed?
No, well, there's another question, because my lawyer had obviously said as well, look, can we get the transcript? So I put forward, and they said, Standards Commission, no transcript.
No transcript.
It must be recorded then, presumably.
Not
recorded either.
Not recorded.
Live streamed, not live streamed. So there is
but yeah, I've seen cases that have been live streamed. So
there's online cases.
How's that work?
I believe that they can stream online cases, but they can't live stream
a hearing.
In-person cases. That's it. But
wonder how much this costs the taxpayer.
How long did the process last?
Oh goodness me. I think I arrived about 9:30. It started at 10 o'clock and I left just after 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
But let's talk about the process from start to finish, Jerry.
Hold on a wee minute before you even do that. Your hearing was decided, and how long did it take before you got a written notification of the outcome?
Was told verbally on the day,
right,
that the decision had been taken by the panel, that they've upheld the breach of the Code of Conduct is there. You're then given the basis of any mitigating statements that you want to make, and basically mine was, I'm sorry, the panel's accepted lies over truth. That basically summated it. So, and then they retire again to decide on what your punishment is going to be. I have to admit, I left at that point because
that's unsafe.
It's
completely
just
unsafe.
did not feel at all comfortable.
How many weeks did it take you though to get the report? Because there's a lot of information. You've got the whole day's witness statements and all the rest of it to complete. So
the decision report. It was just the following week.
So can I ask a question?
I actually got an email that day, which it was like 4 pages of this is basically why you've been done. And I got that by 5:30 that night. And
on the day,
and then within I think about 4 days, I've got a 22-page justification of what had gone on, what was said, what wasn't said, etc.
Cut and paste. Then I take it. I've got a question for you.
Yep.
Was any of the key complainants, those that submitted the complaint, were any of them called
to
give evidence?
No.
None of them?
No.
And so really in effect then, if you look at any other legal parameter, that would be a requirement for any judicial process?
Don't know it's a requirement, but effectively if they were called as witnesses, obviously we
you think about a court of law,
this is the opportunity to ask questions.
This is like the Wish version of a court of law, innit? That's basically it, the Facebook version of a court of law. So really in effect you would still expect certain aspects to carry over, because if I was in a court of law, I can face my accuser.
You were both members of the public and you sat watching the proceedings that's there, and the amount of time that I was questioned by the panel.
Shocking.
And yet the people making the allegations didn't have to.
Comes back to the data breach thing again, Jay. Why was there no disclosure of that at any stage? Why was that case no shut there and then? Why was there a full disclosure to all those involved? Because I'm not solely involved in this. There's other names that you said were part of that report. And again, for a completely irrelevant subject matter that had no bearing on his case or involvement, why would that document be presented to a witness?
It shouldn't. It should
so
never. It shouldn't have.
Commission that admin staff are that incompetent,
and
people are that foolish that they can't even keep a file under lock and key.
It shouldn't have been there. But one of the things that struck me, and this was before the panel returned to tell you what your punishment was, they read out an impact statement.
By whom?
From the complainant.
Wow.
So the complainant, the impact of that was already.
This will be interesting because I'm going to post this post again for that justification of an impact statement.
So the panel read out, and I heard this as a member of the public sitting there, the impact that the complaint had made on the complainant. Now that was never, I don't know that was featured in the productions, David. So you never saw that. Did you get the opportunity to provide an impact statement as a respondent or the accused?
No.
What would have happened if you won the case? What would have happened if there was no case to answer and Article 10 upheld? Would you have been provided an opportunity for an impact statement at that point?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. Because really in effect what you've proven is inaccurate information was presented to paint you in the most negative light. So I would say...
Well, that's the issue. I didn't get the chance to prove that. You're the
victim in this.
I didn't get the chance to prove that.
Right.
That's the issue.
Right.
It's that there's evidence there and everybody wants it, they can see it. But
potentially the press will hopefully pick it up then.
Hopefully. No idea. But the issue that you cannot present relevant contextual information that throws light on whether the decision and the basis of that complaint was there is totally disregarded.
But you're allowed to be questioned on other information not related.
Totally,
and that was one of the things that I picked up when I was sitting as a member of the public watching it.
Yeah.
While David was denied the opportunity to put anything into context because it was directed back to you were directed. In fact, you were even at the point where you wanted to speak about some of the witness statements, some of the productions.
Yes.
You were not allowed to do that because the panel themselves were able at any point to deem it irrelevant.
Well, what I witnessed at that hearing was the badgering and coercive and what would you say, leading questions coming from panel members in relation to the individual that produced the ethical standards report, a very senior officer.
Is it
they
true
were not prepared to accept
for example,
the answer on the report. They had to keep going for alternatives and version of events and rephrase it, rename it. But could we say any member of the public would duly think this? No, that's not what the report's saying. The justifications that was given by that individual, by the way, have to be commended to him, because he was the only person with any common sense.
Actually, I'd emailed the Ethical Standards Commissioner afterwards just to say thanks for his balanced approach, because it was balanced and it was professional.
It begs the question, how much are we paying out our taxpayers' money for this nonsense?
Well, that would have been thousands of pounds, because the investigation took 8 months.
Surely that means exposed.
I was not impressed by the process at all. And as an elected member, I am more than worried that
elected members don't really want to take part in discourse then when these threats come for senior people.
Absolutely. And it goes back to some of the early
culture.
Greg, some of the early episodes that we've had of this about the weaponisation of the Code of Conduct. This is how it's done. This is the process, and as far as I'm concerned, looking at it as a member of the public based on what I just seen, it feels to me that the system is there to suppress you as a councillor, to encourage you not to ask horrible questions or post anything that's remotely controversial, because we'll turn it in such a way that we'll be able to punish you. And that seems to be the case.
And on that depressing note, gentlemen, Jenny Brennan, thank you very much for joining us. David Crichton, thank you very much. And again, gents, until next time.
Until next time.
That's the point. See you later. Thank you.
Thank you.